Previous guest writes the first question. You have the envelope. Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All righty. Let me get my glasses. What was the most unexpected challenge of transition?
It didn't go completely smooth?
Well, before I even answered that, I got pushed out early. So I was at-will employee as the fire chief. And so I describe it like I was packing my parachute as I was getting pushed out of the plane. So there was a lot of abrupt, figure out your life real quick before I was out the door. But then I would say the most unexpected thing is that how long, I'm almost 3 years into my retirement and how long it's taking to process. And, so that in the beginning, I was trying to hurry up and, I wish I would have known it was going to take some time and just go through the process.
Were you trying to hurry up from the aspect of kind of the mental space of I'm a civilian now, so I need to be normal? Or when you say hurry up, what do you mean by that?
I think I was comparing myself to other chiefs that had like another job already lined up, like they're working on their second pension, or I didn't have anything lined up as like another source of income. And but I got used to the amount of money that was getting deposited. And then I started to say, okay, it's okay. I don't have to rush. But I also needed to stop comparing to others' stories because mine was going to be different. And, trying to figure out what I should do next.
For a lot of people who don't realize, for many first responder organizations, when you become the chief, whether it's on the fire side or the law enforcement side, you are an at-will employee. Mm-hmm. And so not a lot of people understand that you are at the mercy of the city council. If the city council has a shift, you are on unsteady ground, so to speak.
Yeah.
Was there any reservations for you taking on the role of chief from that aspect of being an at-will employee?
Yes. I did contemplate it long and hard and got some advice, because it was risky. And at the end of the day, the reason I did was because like throughout my career, I always told every person, whatever position you're in, firefighter, engineer, wherever you can do the most good, that's where you should go, and so maybe even for you, like deciding to promote, I would be the best to serve this organization in this position. And so there was that. And then also just, I needed to show little girls and other women in the fire service, that, I know it myself that you have to see it before you can believe that you can be it, and we have to start changing it so that when you close your eyes and envision a fire chief, you don't think of a salt and pepper guy with a big mustache. You might see, now that you see me, you say, oh, well, I see her face, that she was a fire chief. So those were the reasons I decided. And all throughout my career, I've really been delusional as far as like, I'm going to be able to make an impact. And I've been told many times, idealistic or, not really accepted for my passion for the job. So I think that kind of helped me to get into, to go ahead and go for it. But, so I was, acting. The previous fire chief had a heart attack, right on the front apron, and he had to retire out. So it was kind of a hurry up to get me in the spot. And I was acting for 4 months before they decided to, the city manager and city council decided to appoint me. But I was working as acting, and my actual first day was as the chief was a city council meeting. And, they put me on the spot. And I was kind of set up. And they wanted me to say publicly, they wanted me to say that it was okay to cut an engine company to, to have one entire company less responding throughout the city. And that was a moment where I really put my money where my mouth is, or really like my integrity is what, like, I had to say, no, it's not as safe. And the city manager was like wide-eyed. The council was like, what's going on here? And right after the meeting, the city manager said, I don't even know why I promoted you. He was just, so from my first day, I was in the position for a little over 2 years, but they were trying to get me out from my very first day. So that's like, here you go, fire chief, and then and I'm thinking, oh, the guys back at the station, they're watching the council meeting on TV. I must be a hero. No, it wasn't even understood, like the sacrifice, or like one of the union members or the union leader said, well, you knew that going into this job that, it was at will, or, and so that was, I guess, the beginning of the end. But I did what I could in those 2 years until I couldn't take it anymore.
So many different avenues to go down with that. First off, if you don't want to mention the organization, I'm okay if not mentioning it by name. How big of a fire agency was it?
So only 2 stations, so less than 100 employees, in the fire department.
The aspect of wanting to reduce an engine company, had that been a topic of conversation for your fire department leading up even to the previous chief when he passed away? Yeah.
So, and we had already been through this in 2008, where we cut from 19 on duty every day down to 14. We did cut an engine. And so then they were asking to make us smaller yet again. And I think it was the plan of the chief that before me to cut it, but it was top secret. And so he didn't even tell me, right? And so that's why I feel like I was kind of set up. The city manager kind of had this plan. Maybe potentially the former chief said, oh, she'll go with it. She doesn't like these guys or whatever. And, but no, I wasn't going to go along with it. And it's not just my opinion, it's based on, our call volume, but also the hazards in the city, 24 high rises, a big refinery, all the things and even just the daily calls, I had the data for the medical calls, how we'd, if we cut and we had overlapping calls, we had to rely heavily on mutual aid from adjoining cities because we were really too small. And even when I was pushing for us to be when we cut that first engine, there was discussion about LA County Fire taking over, and, I know that the city leaders wanted to keep that hometown feel, and we did give excellent service, but it's the risk management there, but we don't have helicopters. We don't have the things that we need, when we need to make it happen, so,
I'll call it an internal battle, because for anybody who's worked in that type of environment, I started out at a small city police department as well. And that was always one of the things that was talked about. Oh, let's have the sheriff's department take over the city. Because you've got a group of people, city manager, mayor, elected officials. I'll say this politely. Sometimes they aren't experienced at running businesses when they run for election. They have an idea of how they think the city should run. And they try to implement that. Anybody operating as the chief of police, the chief of the fire department, potentially is going to have battles through their tenure in that position. You would hope that you always have a good working relationship with the city manager and the mayor. But there is, playing devil's advocate, there is the straight up component of, as much as you want to make it personal, you're a line item on a budget sheet at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And if they can reduce that line item, that's what they're aiming for.
Yeah.
Was your previous chief perceived as very much the yes man to the city council?
Yeah. And he came from the outside, and everybody basically hated him. And he treated us like we were, like we weren't hardcore because we didn't get a lot of fires or we weren't busy. And then he was above us. He came from a busier department, and it didn't go over well, obviously. And then he was kind of selling us out, And then when I got put in the chief spot, I understood, or I didn't really understand what I was getting into, because they said, okay, that fire department isn't your team anymore. This is your team, the directors and, the city leadership. So let the BCs run the department, but from my experience and knowing everyone back at the station, and I don't know if this is similar to you too, but they want that number one to be their leader, right? To be the one that has their backs, I'm fighting for y'all every day over at City Hall, and for what is right as well. But that conflict of, so the previous chief, back to what you asked, is that he was with them 100%, which is why he did well over there with City Hall and City Council and all that. And I was with the troops, and so the city manager I had a couple city managers when I was in the position. He was, I will straight tell you, he was sexist, racist, not a lot of redeeming qualities, and very hard to work for. And going into that, when you're working for a civilian instead of someone that has done your job, it's a whole mind blown. There's so much that that they don't know about what comes with when you have me as a chief. But he was didn't care. Had his own agenda. He told me, we would have directors meetings, all the department heads every week, and he told me, don't talk for 6 months. Don't even have any input. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about, this gaslighting and me looking around am I crazy? Is this actually happening? So then I start to second guess myself, and not really, I tried my best. I worked so hard in those couple of years. And ultimately, I would say they pushed me out, but they never cut that engine. It's still online. So whatever was going on then, at least it's not happening now, and I can feel good about that. I don't need to take credit for it or anything like that. But back to the integrity piece is that by me leaving early, I had just turned 53, and if I would have stayed till 55, it would have been an extra $4,000 a month times 30 years. That's $1 million. So I just want to tell you that my integrity is worth $1 million. And I would be, if I didn't stand up for what was right, I don't even want to know what I would look like today. I'd be a mess, so that's really what I'm standing on, in my retirement. And what I preach to other women in the fire service too, is that integrity piece, is everything. I do have a lot of shame and of things that I didn't do and things that I did do. And when you know better, you do better, and so I'm working still on forgiving myself for, the things that weren't great. But that's why what I'm doing now is helping women that are in the fire service so that hopefully they don't have as much to carry out on their way out.
While you were with that organization, how many other women did you work with?
When I first got on the job, there was a woman there that was the first woman. And her name was Deena as well. So I'm sure she was thrilled.
Great, you had to hire her.
Not even, but the same name. And then this is one of the things that I'm ashamed about too, is that, when I got hired, I was going for it, right? I'm I just got to drag around the heaviest guy. And, I had a boyfriend at the time that was 250 pounds, and I just run around with him on my back and just do everything I could to say, you can count on me. Really what they want to know is you can pull them out of a burning building, and that's the main point. But then they started calling me the good Deena. And so then they were trying to pit us against each other, and I fell for it, because I was thinking, oh, well, yeah, I like this. I like being the good Deena, knowing now I feel bad about that I did that to her, but now I understand that that's what the patriarchy does, is it wants to, divide and conquer, so now that I understand it, I explain it, and that's why I, encourage other women to get united and, have unity with other women on the job.
When you were working with another woman and they started pitting you against each other, did you at that time have a network of other women firefighters that you could pull on, talk to, or did you kind of feel like you were an island amongst yourselves or yourself? Yeah,
I was an island. And, like once in a while, like on a fire or something, I'd see another woman, from another department and be like, what's up? Like, that's it. And there wasn't anything like, I think the feeling was like, I'm just trying to survive over here. Like, peace. Like, we can't even talk. Right. And then, and we can talk about this too. I'm wearing my Women's Fire Alliance shirt, but, it wasn't until 2018, right before I took the BC's test, that I saw other women. There was a conference, a summit put on by the LA County Fire Chiefs, and it was called A Reason to Include and Support Everyone. And I saw tons of women in this ballroom, like, wearing black, because when you promote to BC, you're wearing black and with gold bugles, and just like, it was like, oh my goodness, and that what came from that was this Women's Fire Alliance, which is a nonprofit that now supports, is a community. They put together, I'm not on there anymore, but they put together like mentor groups, like text groups. So like if you're like going through the academy, or you have someone to say, how do I start the chainsaw, or whatever the thing is, how do I wear my hair, so though I help to put those communities in place, so that, because it is very lonely, and I always say, like, I just felt like I was flopping around like a fish, like just trying to figure out, like just trial and error. And really, I tried to basically be a man. And it didn't work out for me either.
The sad aspect to that is that every, call it a group, you go back in time and you look at, right now what's coming to mind is the movie Men of Honor, and the story of becoming the first Black Navy diver and what he had to go through. And unfortunately, whatever the defined group is, always has that hurdle to overcome, because these professions, first responder, veteran, even in 2026, are still majority white male driven professions. Mm-hmm. The minority aspect has definitely grown. I don't know if they're still dealing with as much, but women are still probably, even in 2026, dealing with a lot of discrimination, a lot of perception that you should be home making dinner as opposed to out here fighting a fire, deploying as a veteran, whatever. And we give it time, and somebody's going to make a movie of, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to you, but somebody's going to make a movie of a female firefighter down the road for whatever reason, and somebody's going to look back and go, wow, what they had to go through, what she had to go through. Mm-hmm. It's never perceived, or at least it's not globally perceived, until there's time behind it, and you can look back and really see what the extent of it was. And that's the unfortunate thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you say, like, a movie that I watch that's inspiring is called The Mountain Queen. It's on Netflix. It's about the first female Sherpa to get up Everest. And the thing that keeps me going, or one thing that kept me going, was,
when it comes to sunglasses, first responders and military members definitely don't baby them. They get dropped, thrown in a utility pocket, or tossed in gear bags. Frontline Optics was created for that reality. You get premium eye protection without paying designer brand prices for something that won't survive your lifestyle. From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective coatings and a water-repellent finish, every pair is designed to handle long days, harsh conditions, and real work. And here's where Frontline Optics separates themselves from the pack. When life happens and your glasses break, they offer a no-questions-asked replacement program, even for prescription glasses. On top of that, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every purchase goes to support the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping families of those who gave everything. So if you're looking for sunglasses that look good, are built tough, and come from a company that actually understands the job, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines.
Like what she says is that she wanted to do the job so much, and if she felt like it was her calling, that she cut her hair and, acted like did the cooking or whatever until she could get up the mountain, right? And like, that's kind of how I felt, was that like, and when I say that I have shame about the things that I did to survive, to make it through, it was because ultimately I wanted to stay there. I wanted to do the job. I wanted to move up the ranks, and I did what I had to do to get to that position.
Well, let me take you backwards then to get a better idea of the woman who became a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born? Where was hometown?
I was born in the LBC and the 562. So my mom and dad got divorced when I was like 7. My dad, who has passed, he was in Vietnam. He's a Marine. And I know I'm getting choked up now, but he did serve our country, and it got him 50 years later after Vietnam, right? He died from multiple myeloma, but I'm glad that he wasn't in my life when I was growing up, but we did reconnect, and I feel like we really still do have a soul connection. And so I feel like that integrity side of me came from my dad. Like, he's a really good person. And then
kind of work did mom do?
So my mom was just a wife. So I did the math. I saw his...
Just a wife, though. The job that works 26 hours a day.
Well, yeah. But, right. But so when I got all his paperwork from the Marines, and so I did the math that my mom was basically pregnant with me. They never said that, but I'm like, he got out in 69.
Wait a minute, you got married 8 months before I was born.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay. So they were married. My dad now I don't know all the stories, but he had some really bad PTSD that, my mom doesn't even tell me the stories about like what he was going through. And so when I was around 7, he was like, bye, I didn't ask for this. I don't want this. And I'm not even mad at it. But then my mom had to, go to work. She didn't even have a job and, build her life. And so then she got remarried, probably like a year later. My stepdad was not great. And I'm like, your classic Gen X, latchkey kid. I would say parentified. I was like the leader of the house. Like, I was the one that had to give the dog the pill. I was the one that, and I didn't ask for that job, but that was what I was given. So,
brothers and sisters?
I have a younger sister, and I used to take care of her. Like, when there's an earthquake, I'm the one grabbing her to go under the table, and, but it wasn't, it wasn't a terrible childhood. I just now, you can see I kind of have charged with a little emotion about it. Like, and I'm working through that too, with the forgiveness. And, I know that it was for a reason, that those leadership qualities were already developing, and I did want to share one story was that before it wasn't even a thought in my mind to be a firefighter, but one day my mom and my sister and I were walking into Toys R Us. I was like 11 years old to get some toys, and there was a kid that he was playing around with those glass doors. And he put his arm in there, and it got stuck in between the doors, right? And I'm like 10 years old. And my mom's just standing there frozen. And I went over and pulled those doors apart. Now I know they're not really that hard. But I thought
they were hard for a 10-year-old.
And then and he was free, right? And so like that experience of seeing my mom do nothing. And then, so I told myself at that moment, like, I am never going to be the person that just does nothing if someone needs help, right? So these are kind of like the building blocks that got me to be a firefighter. But because of my, the role modeling or the lack of role modeling, I decided after high school, instead of, going to college or going into the Army even, or going into the Forest Service, or that would have been more suited for me, my mom kind of just said, like, you need to find a man, have a couple kids, white picket fence. And so that's what I did. And a few years into that, I said, I'm not happy. I created this life. And like now, I'm such a feminist now, but back then I was waking up at 4 a.m. to iron my husband's shirts. I was like the housewife, the good wife, and working as a waitress. And it's really an Eagles song that got through to me. I know I'm corny, but it's true. I was listening and it said, so oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and we never even know we have the key. And I thought, you know what? I can fucking leave. You know what I mean? This isn't my fate. And so that started that I was working as a waitress. I was a single mom. I had 50-50 custody. I took an EMT class at a regional occupational program just because I wanted to learn CPR if my kids choked or something. And when I took the EMT class, I fell in love with it. I got like 100% on all my tests. And then I got the job at Long Beach Memorial in the ER. I know I just ran through my whole...
It's okay, because I've got the ability to rewind and take you back into certain sections.
No, I skipped my whole childhood.
But you bring up something that, through doing this podcast, I've come to learn is there's a greater majority of us who come to these careers already with trauma.
Yeah.
We generally don't usually come to these careers with the white picket fence growing up thing. For whatever reason, and maybe we're drawn to these careers because we learn the ability to triage and prioritize as a young kid.
Yeah.
And it fits right in.
Yep.
With that, though, you mentioned the Forestry Service. When you were coming towards the end of high school, even if college wasn't on your radar, what were you thinking you wanted to do before mom then said, hey, just go be a housewife?
Well, so I said my stepdad wasn't great. He was pretty abusive. And there was a point where my mom had us in the car and she was going to leave. It was like, good. But then I found out later that he threatened to kill her and us if she left. And again, I made a decision like, I'm never going to make a decision based out of fear, so then my stepdad, he got sick when I was like a senior in high school, and he was hospitalized for like 6 months. And I went like crazy. I'm like ditching school, driving his truck around, going to, parties and whatever. And I just kind of got off track. I mean, I was always like an A student. Like I was smart in school. So I could have done anything, but I kind of just got off track, and I kind of just was looking for safety and security. And, I mean, I'm not going to go back in time, obviously, but that's just was the path for me.
So you first started out working in a hospital as a nurse, EMT?
EMT, yeah. They had techs in the ER, and so kind of like just assistants to the nurses and the doctors, but super fun, like level 1 trauma center. So I got to go to the helipad and help get the patients down, and we would have gunshot wounds and all kinds of stuff come in.
What year was that?
That was 96.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how soon after you're doing that job do you actually start thinking about, hey, let me look at being a firefighter?
So I started taking all the prerequisites for nursing at Long Beach City College, and I was going to be a nurse. And I have so much respect for nurses and what they do, and I think it's a beautiful profession. But then the firefighter paramedics that came in, they were like, oh, like you seem pretty strong. You seem like you might like this job. You should do a ride along. And it never even occurred to me to be a firefighter. I never saw any women firefighters. And so I did my first ride along with, I think it was Rescue 9. I ended up doing like almost all 24 stations at Long Beach. Shout out Semper Paratus. But I loved it. It was like everything just came together, like, because there is like that EMS portion, that pre-hospital care, but there's also like every call is something new, it's exciting, the camaraderie, and then just when you go on scene, the captain's got a job, I'm watching, supervising, okay, the engineer's shutting off the TV, the medics are doing this, and I thought, this is a really cool freaking job. And we brought patients back into the ER where I worked, and one of the female doctors was like, Deena, you are glowing. Like, you found it. And I'm like, I know. So it's like, don't stop me when there's something that I want, right? So I switched my major to fire science. And just, okay, what do I have to do? And then, one of the women at Long Beach Fire, she helped me to, practice the physical agility. And, then I went, I heard about from her a volunteer combination, La Habra Heights Volunteer Fire Department, went through their academy, worked as a volunteer while I was still working the ER, and just doing all the things, to build that resume and take tests as I could. And it was a little under 3 years from that first ride along that I got hired full time. I took 13 tests. Wow.
Even at that time, do you think you could have gotten on had you not done that volunteer aspect?
It would have been hard. And Long Beach Fire, that was actually my first real test. And I wanted to work for them, but I wasn't ready because I didn't have a fire academy at that time under my belt. And when I took the physical agility, I barely passed. And Long Beach is really known for they want Division I athletes for their women. So I wasn't even getting close to the time that they wanted for the women. But it was still a valuable experience, to take that being my first test.
Now, before you actually got hired, did you actually put yourself through a fire academy, or did you go on your organization's dime?
Just the volunteer, which was 19 weekends. And then I didn't go through a college academy. They put me through El Camino. And so that was my first time. But I was ahead of the game because I've already been, I already had an academy. So it was learning the South Bay way. And it wasn't, it's work, but it was good academy. I made it.
So what year did you come on full time?
2003.
And the first step off into being a full-time firefighter, and this may even sound like a rhetorical question, did you feel accepted, or were you already fighting that uphill battle?
Well, first, let me say that on those 13 tests, I did, you have an agility, you have a written, you have an oral interview. And I did an oral interview with, I don't want to say the city that I work for, even though you can figure it out. I also had an interview with another city that same week. And I could tell by that interview panel, they weren't liking me. I wasn't a good fit. But I felt like the interview panel that I had at the city that ended up hiring me, that it was a good connection. They did a good job interviewing and pulling out of me like what they really wanted to know, because your first answer is usually like a canned answer.
No.
And then, so I would give my canned answer, and then they said, "No, give me another one." And I was like, "Oh shit, I got to tell the real thing because I don't have another one."
I'm surprised there's just not a whiteboard when you walk into these oral panels and go, "Which one are you going to choose for your stock first response?" We could just cut it out right now, and move on to the next one.
I know, it's so ridiculous. But when I got ranked,
did you actually say, "I want to get cats out of trees. I want to rescue cats from trees"?
No, I did not say that, but we have done that. And, out of sewers and all kinds of places. But, so I ranked on that was one of my first tests, but I didn't get picked in the first group. So then I was hired by them like a year later after taking that initial interview. So, but back to your question though, I feel like it was kind of novel. And I think that that they were kind of amused by me, even that like, wow, here's a chick, especially because the first one was, okay. And they're like, oh, this is kind of cool that, she's doing all this stuff. And so I think it was kind of novel. And then I think I started to notice that I had experience. I mean, I had actually at that time when I first got hired, I had more fires at the volunteer place. So not like I was like super salty or anything, and I came with some experience, and I noticed that when I would say things, if they never heard of it, they're like, oh, well, she doesn't know. But like if it was like, somebody from, a guy, they'd be like, oh, yeah, out. Because I remember saying, do you guys pack an out-of-county bag for brush fires? And they're like, out-of-county bag? Let's check. And I'm like, everybody says that. That's happened to me countless times, where they just, and that's, now that I know, like just that dismissal or not believing what you're saying. Like, to me, it's like, it was like, so like, why don't you guys, I don't really get it. Why don't you believe me, that this is a thing? They didn't take me seriously. So I would say it was varying degrees of that. And,
never to the point though, that it made you think, yeah, I'm going to go find another career because this just isn't worth the fight for me.
Actually, in the beginning, I was looking for a busier department.
But not to leave the fire service.
Not to leave the fire service, but I wanted to be, it wasn't Long Beach. And so I was like, what? So I was kind of shopping around, but I still wanted to do it. But I wanted to do all of it, and I knew that it was going to be limited at that small department, so I had to.
Did you ever consider leaving the state?
I tested, I think, in Vegas, but I did have 2 kids. I was single mom, so that was kind of, that's really the deciding factor of why I stayed where I first got hired, because it wasn't worth the risk to them. If I didn't have them, I probably would have just said, just go for it. But just having the benefits and pay and everything that I need, and the schedule, quite honestly, because we worked 48.96, and I would go work my 2 days, and the kids would be with their dad, and then I would be able to spend my days off with them, take them to school every day, and it turned out to be a great situation. Where does the desire to promote come from, and is it there with you day one, figuratively speaking? Like I said, I think that I would just had this idea ever since I'm little that I'm going to change the world, and that just seemed like the way to do it. Right. And like along the way, I'm always like reading books and taking classes and just always like wanting to learn and be better. Like that's just part of the fabric of who I am. But when my first promotion, I can tell you that story, was so like I just explained, like, so Is
engineer the first promotion, or is there a promotion before that? So
that's the other thing with the small department is that it's only when positions open up not very often, right? Like you could have somebody promote. So the next one would be like firefighter paramedic, but at that time they had to send you to school. So that was a big investment. And then we're all waiting in line to go to paramedic school. And then some of the paramedics worked in that spot for 30 years. So like, then there's no spot, right? So then you got to go to the next thing. And so, when I got hired and I got off probation, and the fire chief at the time said he advised me to go work at the fire academy. And so that was great advice, because then I was able to get some credibility that I knew the craft. I got to know the job better. I got to network with the other firefighters that were instructors. And it seems like the firefighters that pick to work as instructors, like, are kind of similar mindset, like that they just love it so much. They want to do it on their off days, And so I did that. And then
being a smaller fire agency, what was the benefit to the organization to keep a firefighter assigned to the academy?
No, like I did it on my off days.
Oh, like so this wasn't your work assignment?
No, so like on my days off, I would go work over there, and I think that the chief was trying to help me to build credibility and to build my confidence, and that was good advice to just go over there and do that. So I did that. I was taking my fire officer classes, working at the academy. I went back, and so I'm just a rookie, 1-2 years, and I went back to the volunteer fire department and worked as a captain there for $15 an hour. And so I was practicing being a captain and I was a firefighter over here. And I am just trying to paint a picture for you, working at the fire academy and taking my fire officer classes just to so I could understand more, so that I could understand my boss. And
is there no liability in working for multiple organizations? Would you be allowed to do that today?
I don't think so, because the shit really hit the fan when I went out on a brush fire with that other department, and I got my full-time department over here. So,
hey guys,
I was so ballsy. But I was going out on these big fires when I worked in the ER too, and I would just say, "Hey, I'm not coming in. I'm on a fire," and I had a printed legal paper that said, you can't fire me because I'm operating in emergency capacity over here.
I just think back to when I was a cop, and there would be no way that I could go, hey, it's my day off, so I'm going to go be a police officer in another city.
I know. I'm actually thankful that was even possible for me to do. Anyhow, the captain's test comes up. The requirements were only 6 years as a firefighter or 4 years with an AS degree or something like this. And so when the captain's test came out, I had 4 years and 20 days. And I just wanted to take the test just to see what was on it, right? And there's no pressure. I don't need to promote. 4 years on the job. So there was 16 of us in this small department that went to the written. And then a bunch got dropped on the written. And then I don't remember how many went to the tactical portion. And then there's an interview. And then basically we're ranked 1 to 7. And there's 2 vacancies. 2 captains are retiring, right? So whoever's getting promoted, there's going to be 2 people promoted right away. And so I came out number 1 on the list with 4 years on the job. And I think the chief at the time was like, because they have the rule of 3s, they could pass you up. And so I think he considered passing me up. But then it's like, well, then, there's going to be more positions, right? Like, so do I go through the heartache of passing her up, or do I just promote her? And so
how long would that list have lasted?
It lasted, I think, a year. And I think...
So after
they actually extended it a year. So I think it was good for like 2 years. And almost everybody on that list got promoted.
There was that much turnover with captains in that organization?
It was weird because it was just like the timing of the thing. Like, like a bunch of people get hired and then they go all out at the same time. Or it might have been like they had a good contract, they got a lot of money, and then they're
that's a great point, that for somebody who hasn't worked for a small organization, a lot of times it's those waves.
Yeah.
You'll get a bunch of retirees at one time. So guess what? A bunch of younger members are going to come on, and then they're going to lock up those spots.
Yeah.
So it all depends on timing on when you get into the organization. Yeah. What's going to be your window for promoting? Yeah, exactly. And I was a captain for 12 years, and I would say that because there was no movement, and it's hard. It gets kind of stagnant, and we're really, especially when we're not that busy, you're like fighting complacency and just like, it's kind of hard. Did you ever consider, after even getting to a captain's position, going to another organization? Would that have opened up any doors for you to go at that level?
You know what? That's a really good question, because LA County Fire, who is like, shakalaka, everybody wants to wear the bear, at least that's how it was for us firefighters. And LA County hadn't hired in so long, and they started hiring. And I was like, oh, they would just eat me alive. Like, oh, this bitch was a captain over there. Let's see, and I was like, and quite honestly, it was like a 50% pay cut. I mean, I got paid really well.
Now, were you comparing it to, as a captain, you would have gone back down to being a firefighter?
Yeah.
Or could you have lateraled across at the same level?
No.
Oh, okay.
So, it was like, and again, considering the kids, and all of that. And so I did consider leaving still, but it was, I'll just stay. And those first couple of years was really painful. Really, really painful.
First couple of years as a captain?
Yeah, because I'm supervising guys with 20 years on the job, and I'm a woman, and I really, we're talking about people that promote too fast. Yeah, I did, but, what are we going to do now then? You want me to go sit in my room? I'm going to do my best, right, to make sure everybody's safe. I'm doing everything that I can to be a good captain, not really doing the right things. I wish that I had more leadership training, and actually from a woman too, or because things happen all the time, and guys would give you advice, and it's bad advice. I'm just thinking of a time that one guy stole my idea, took credit for it. And I told one of the guys, they're like, oh, you just take that as a compliment. Don't, but that's the advice you're giving. That's not what you would tell your bro. Treat me like a bro.
But it's also that catch-22 of, and I'm sure you had these conversations once you promoted up and started mentoring younger members. That idea of, hey, if you've got an interest in promoting, take the test, learn the process, see what it's about. And so, as you probably experienced, a lot of times, those people who go into those testing process thinking, I don't have a chance, they end up acing it. Yeah. Because there's no stress. Exactly. They're calm. But the guy who really wants it, he goes into that process and vapor locks. Exactly. And so now you end up with a person who's got 4.5 years on, coming out number 1 in the promotional testing. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what happened.
So that first year, like, and then I'm on probation as a captain too, right? And then I had
You hadn't even cleared probation as a firefighter.
I know, barely. And I had a really good engineer, and I loved his company. He was great, smart, salty, years on the job. And then I started getting wind from my other firefighters. They're like, hey, Johnny's taking too much pressure being your engineer. Like, he's about to bounce. And I went to him and I said, Johnny, please just stay with me for 6 more months till I'm off probation, and then you can go do whatever you want. Like, I don't want to not, to bounced out off probation. So I am forever grateful to him for doing that. And I'm grateful for the firefighter that told me, like, the inside scoop, like, this is what's happening, and, it was just a lot of talking shit behind my back. Even my BC one time he talked shit about me at the kitchen table in front of everybody and me. And I had to go tell him later, like, you can't do that. That's against the rules, don't do that again. But just, subtle things of eye rolling or, oh yeah, like, one guy would call me cruise director, like, just to, like, make fun of, how I would come out with the lineup at the morning. But, because they couldn't attack, like, what I had to say, they have to, like, make fun of who I am, And so another story that comes to mind is that one of the first calls, like, I went on, there's 3 people on the engine, the captain, engineer, and firefighter, and then the 2 paramedics are on the rescue ambulance. And so we went on a traffic collision, and the rescue got there first, and they're parked in, I know you're familiar with the area, but they're parked, like, in the middle of the median on Sepulveda, and treating this patient, like, with cars, like, zooming by.
Sepulveda's not a busy street, so it's okay. There's, like, no traffic on Sepulveda.
See how I'm telling you? Like, no, I'm like, I thought I was the crazy one, but the way that women have been conditioned, and myself, and not feeling secure in the position and trying to soften my leadership, I said, don't you think it would be better if you moved the rescue to the curb? And the paramedic looked at me and he goes, no. And I was like, oh man, I fucked up.
Now let's play devil's advocate, though. Every civilian is sat in traffic, and then they finally get up to the scene, and you're like, why did you guys have the damn rig blocking 3 freaking lanes of traffic?
I know. I know.
And I guarantee you there's been times where you were like, we're not moving the rig. We're keeping this, whatever reason, we're keeping it blocked.
Right. But, like, for me, that responsibility of the safety of everybody, like,
I get it.
Was number one. Like, yeah, it. Like, I know you can play it all different ways, but at that time it was really the way that I wasn't giving an order, or, and so I went back.
You left it as a question, as opposed
and it was
to just
very passive. And I did that throughout my career, where I made suggestions, and people didn't take it seriously. Like, I'm trying to hint to you what to do. Like, no, that doesn't work, right? Like, I'm embarrassed to sit here and tell you that, but that is the truth, But
in your defense, that's not just a female thing. Every new leader goes through that breaking in process where you actually gain the self-confidence to go up to another member of the organization and go, hey, do this.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about this the other day. I wonder if it would ever get to a point where the first responder community could operate like the military, in the sense that it's a double-edged sword that many of us, when we promote up from the first responder side, we work our way through an organization. Mm-hmm. And so as you move to the next rank, you're now leading people that you've worked with. You're leading people that you used to joke around with. They start looking at you going, I remember the stupid shit you used to do, and now you're my boss. Whereas in the military, you go to the academy, you come in as a brand new lieutenant, mm-hmm. and you for whatever reason, there's always the built-in separation. And mm-hmm. for the most part, mm-hmm. you didn't work with the people coming up to that position that you're now leading. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if we could ever get that way with the first responder community, is You get hired as an enlisted, a worker bee, a firefighter,
Yeah.
or you get hired as administration, a captain.
Yeah, they tried to like put you with the crew, like not with the crew you were currently working with, like that was the extent of it. But because it's such a small department, you know, and I think at bigger departments they send you somewhere and kind of maybe your reputation precedes you, but at least you're starting fresh with people.
A lot of the bigger organizations, as soon as you get that, every promotional bump forces you into a new environment. Like if you're with the sheriff's department, you get promoted, you're going back to the jail. So you're now leading men and women who are, for the most part, fresh out of the academy. So you're a baby sergeant, they're baby deputies.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
I believe even when you go from sergeant to lieutenant, they're not going to keep you over the unit that you were previously supervising. They're going to put you, and I think that's the best thing to do for a new leader, is take them out of that environment where people already, you spend enough time in an organization, everybody's going to eventually know you, but maybe just put you around different new people.
Yeah, it leveled out to the proper order of things, where I would say that, you know, young kids came on and they only ever knew me as a captain. And then when and so it did, but like I had a long way to go from just promoting right out of the gate, you know, with 4 years on the job. So, yeah, so it was, I would say, I don't know, you'd have to ask the guys, you know, I thought I did an okay job.
Did the number of women increase through your career?
No. So the one that was hired before me, she retired, and then we did hire a woman, and then I left. So now she's the only woman.
So that organization's always been ones and twos as far as women.
Yeah. And like next door in Manhattan Beach has never had a woman. Redondo's had one or two. St. Torrance, maybe like a few.
Again, playing devil's advocate, the time when you were a chief, did you run the hiring process, and did you have to evaluate the quality of women coming in the door? And the unfortunate thing is you're a minority coming in the door. There's a limited number of you. So if 3 come into the door to test and 2 of them are not up to the standard, it gives a bigger perspective of, oh, look, none of them are qualified. Whereas you get 50 guys come in the door, and even if 10 of them aren't qualified, you still go, well, shit, 40 of them are qualified. It's that weird psychological perspective of who's qualified to do the job or not. At the end of the day, there's still just a limited number of women, even today, who are coming towards these careers. Yeah. So they carry a bigger burden of doing well for the next batch of women that are coming through.
Right. Yeah, because that is one of the responsibilities and weight that we feel, is that we are representing all women. And when we make a mistake, it's like, that's why women shouldn't be in the fire service, you know, when guys can make mistakes all day long, you know, and it almost gets to be like a life or death kind of feeling. Because I was just talking to one of the guys the other day that was my firefighter for a long time, and he said, I used to feel bad for you because, you know, like you did a size up and you said, oh, I should have known that. And like you were just beating yourself up. And I didn't realize how life or death, or how, and you, like we talked about, you don't perform at your best, you know, when it's like, I can't make a mistake.
You added more stress to yourself than what was already being put on you. 100%.
And, you know, along the way, like I would say like, oh, I have to prove myself to these guys over and over again. But really, I was proving myself to me too.
The grind doesn't need an introduction. You feel it in the early mornings, in the long days, in those moments when quitting would be easier, but you don't. Grind, spelled GRND, isn't just a brand. It's a mindset. It's the decision to keep moving forward even when progress feels slow and nobody's watching. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear is built around one simple idea: give everything you have and then give more. Rooted in American grit and culture, every piece is designed with purpose and commitment woven into the fabric. It's functional, durable, and built to hold up under real effort. Grind is made for people who outwork the rest. And when you wear Grind, you're not just wearing a logo. You're representing how you live, how you train, and how you show up. So visit thegrindcollective.com. That's the GRND collective.com and use the promo code transition15 for 15% off your order. You're already on the grind. Now wear it.
Having some self-doubt and just to put on them too, though, that I needed external validation. At the time, I didn't have what I have now. And like I said, what I teach other women is that self-trust, that self-concept, that internal authority. And I think that part of it was the external validation, needing that made me feel smaller because the feedback was not great. You know, I'm looking at myself through their eyes. And then also I kind of deconstructed that, did I need validation from men? Was I centering men? And so that's when you start to get to the, like, why it was so wounding to me is because everything my identity is built on is like men's approval. And I'm not getting it at all.
I'm sure there's some psychologist listening going, you were chasing daddy's love.
Well, yeah. And that's what I say too. I'm like, it's like serious but joking, but like I have a mother wound and a father wound and, I'm a hot mess. I'm just perfect for a first responder.
You check all the boxes.
Yeah, I check all the boxes.
The other thing for somebody to think about, hearing your story and all that you went through. And again, it goes back to that thing of, it depends on the era and who's the group at the time. Because I remember when I came on the job, there were still people that I was working with who were of the era where if you weren't 6 feet, you couldn't get hired as a male, and they were just coming into that range of where more agencies were being open to, if you're less than 6 foot, we'll hire you. But for many years, you had to be 6 foot.
Wow.
And so you just look, be thankful you're in the job at the time you're doing it, because if you go back any other time, you might not have been accepted in.
Oh, yeah. I think about that, and I'm so grateful for it because when, about the time that I got in, but also when I was getting promoted to fire chief, there was a big push, like the DEI push, and that was one of the reasons I felt that the chief put me out there. And like, if it was now, I would have zero chance. And so, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity the way that it worked out with the timing of my life.
So how many years in did you become a BC?
After being a captain for 12 years, I took the BC's test and, I came out number 1. I mean, like, that is one thing that, like, civil service, like, was a fair test, right?
People are going to complain. It's real simple. Go ace the test and be number 1.
Yeah. But when the test, and so I was the most senior captain by this time when we finally had a BC test. Well, let me backtrack because there was another BC test that I almost was there. And they wanted to hurry up and have the test before I met the requirements. Yeah, you know this is familiar. And then when it was another BC test, they reduced the requirements for homeboy to come in and take the test against me. It's like, nice, union. That's really nice. And so, like, how they got in my head.
But every organization has done something similar.
Okay.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I mean, you've talked to a lot of people.
In my experience, I saw times where there were testing cycles that, hey, I'm going to push the city council, the city manager to let me do this testing early to establish a list. Yeah. Because they know that so-and-so hasn't announced their retirement yet, right? But they're going to announce it. Yeah. Or, hey, let me get so-and-so in to a position before they're, it's gamesmanship to a sad degree. Yeah. And regardless of the reason why, many times in our careers, the announcing of when a testing ban is going to occur sometimes has a specific benefit. They're targeting somebody. Yeah. Hey, we need to get this testing through. Or that's why I asked you how long the list lasts. Because sometimes, hey, the list should expire in a year. We had 2 captains openings. We filled them in theory, the list should die.
Yeah.
Wait, let's extend the list. Now,
Yeah.
granted, everybody on that list got promoted, but I'm sure you probably, maybe not in your organization, but you might have seen other organizations where they took just who they needed. That list died. We'll retest again in a year from now.
Yeah. Yep. I've seen it.
So it's the politics of playing the game that sucks.
Yeah.
Did you have the same chief all the way up until he passed away, or did you end up having?
No,
did
he
you have
didn't pass away. He just had a
heart attack?
Yeah. So he became our chief. I went through 3 chiefs while I was a captain, but he did put on a couple BC tests and ultimately recommended me to be fire chief. So the battalion chief, I wanted to tell you that, so I'm the senior captain, right, on the job, and the battalion chief test is announced, and their pick, they want their pick, or the guy's pick is the guy that they just changed the requirements for to get him in. And so, all the hubbub is about like, oh, this is he's going to get it, whatever. And I'm like thinking, I'm almost agreeing with them. And then something like clicked. Like, I'm like, I'm the senior captain. Like, I just started to pump myself up and do the things to study for the test, to try. And I talk about this too, that it's like very vulnerable and humbling to try, and so I did. And, I went like, talk about manifesting and all this. I was like wearing black. I got a gold watch. I wrote, "You are a battalion chief" on my mirror. And like, I went and I was like, I'm obsessive with when I get on stuff.
I hadn't sensed that.
So when I switched to say like, I'm going to get it, I think like, really, I had to believe in myself, right? Like, and another little tidbit of that story is that there's a guy, an engineer that I had been friends with throughout the years. I always like say, I know you'll understand this, like I went to both of his weddings and I'm like thinking we're friends, right? And then when
your work acquaintances. Yeah,
like I was so naive. And then he's rooting. I'm like, oh, he's going to be on my side. He knows I'm, No, he's rooting for the other guy. And I'm like, I thought we're friends. Like, these are like all there's so many heartbreaks of like so many guys I worked with that I just loved that broke my heart, really, because they were either bullshitting me or I don't know, like, or turned on me, or, sometimes they say like, your biggest haters are the ones that know how really powerful you are. Mm-hmm. Like, they really see you.
If you're not a threat to me, there's no reason for me to try to knock you down. Right. You're going to knock yourself down.
Yeah.
But when you're a threat to me and I gotta get the advantage, I'm going to do everything I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you bring up a good point, though. And this is the learning aspect for somebody listening, is it gets said a lot, but if you don't embrace it, it's very powerful when you do. Mm-hmm. You went into that BC testing saying, I'm the senior captain. I'm already manifesting it. That aspect of getting your mind right, I don't care where we're talking.
Yeah.
Man, woman, whoever. You're going into a testing process, half the battle is getting your mind right to say, I'm the best candidate for this position.
Yep.
That is important for you to realize when you're going into a testing process.
Yeah, 100%. Because I have a girlfriend who is getting ready to take the captain's test with San Jose. And she's like, well, if I get on the list or not. And I go, you do not go into that mediocre or giving some half-ass effort. Like, no, don't. Like, that's not the way you get promoted, or that's not the way you should even be.
You're not going to perform well.
No, you're not. And like, I don't like that attitude, and I told her that straight. So hopefully I can help her.
After you became captain, did you start growing your network of women firefighters?
So really, it wasn't until that event that I was telling you about was right before the BC list the announcement came. So I really didn't have a network of other women until like 2018. So And that was helpful. I had a mentor, a woman who was a battalion chief at LAFD, who was really helpful. And I had guy mentors too, as far as like dialed guys that, know their tactical stuff or, so I appreciate those guys that help me as well. I think that women should have women and men mentors. And also, I think it's important to have a confidant that is not in the fire service, like so that because we are like in, such our bubble, like that we can't see things sometimes, that we need someone that's not in the service to help us through things in life.
Yeah, definitely keep the person or persons in your life who pull you back to being just you outside the uniform. Yeah.
I think, especially when I became the chief, my poor husband was like, he can't hear about it anymore. Like it was
Pick somebody else.
It was almost as rough on him as it was on me. But what's funny is like, well, if you saw my husband, he's like a big tough guy. But it was really hard for him because he said, like, especially
is he in the fire service?
No. He's a Teamster. He's working for the film industry. He drives trucks. He's transportation. And then he also has a hot rod shop. He restores classic cars. But I made sure to find someone. I did date within, it was either firefighters or cops. And I was like, I need to find someone outside of this, who, like, he has always admired me and thinks it's cool, like, because for us in it, we're like, oh yeah, sure, you're cool. We're doing the same thing. But he said, like, I would tell him stories, and he said, I will go down there and stand on the app floor, and those guys can line up, and I'll kick each one of their asses one at a time. And I know he would. So it was hard on him having to see me cry and tell about all my stuff. And so, like, I know that he's glad that we're past that.
Well, you can't underplay that enough in the sense of, Did you not had him at home in your corner? Had you had a generic husband who was like, oh, sorry, baby, had a bad day at work, just hope it's better tomorrow. And not that there's anything wrong with that. What I mean is they just don't understand how important it is to have strength behind you in these environments.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's the thing. I say that the number one thing that I didn't know I needed was the support of other women. And I, like you said, I was on an island and I didn't have a community of women. I mean, I did have my husband, but that's a lot of pressure to be the one person that is your support, So, I'm very grateful for him. I did call him out too. When on my acceptance speech of taking the, I'll show you that. But I was like, James Lee, stand up, because this is part yours too, right? Like,
so when you became a BC, how many BCs within your organization?
3, A, B, and C platoon. And so I was the first female battalion chief in the South Bay. That was kind of a big deal. And it was, and I would say I told the chief, he said, what's your biggest fear? And I said, my biggest fear is what happened when I promoted to captain and everybody hated me and all blah, 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 is going to happen again. And he's like, but now you're coming from a smarter place. You're better prepared. Yeah, that's true. But it did happen again. And it was undermining and insubordination. And it was bad.
Now, the odd way to think about that, though, is you're now the senior captain. Had it leveled out to where you weren't really dealing with much? And then what changed as the BC to all of a sudden now re-ramp it back up? So
first, the position, it's so great riding on the rig, like on the engine or the truck, and you're on the headsets and you get to, talk to each other. And then in our organization, some BCs have a driver, but you're it. Like, then I was never an engineer. I was never a paramedic. I knew the city just from riding in the front seat. And then now I have to map myself in. I have to position the rig. I have to do the size up, all the stuff. It was lonely, and there's no one to bounce stuff off of. Like, oh, okay. And then it was also good because, like, I could just take off, be like, bye, I'm going to go to the beach, and you don't have to be like, hey, guys, we're leaving in 10 minutes, So, like, there was good stuff, too.
Hey, Captain, you got this? See ya.
Yeah, I trust you. But, so it wasn't right away, but there was a couple of us that promoted. That other guy did get promoted. And we started getting a reputation of being yes men, and that we were kissing the chief's ass. And like I already told you, they didn't like that chief. And quite honestly, I could speak for both of us. No matter who was in the chief spot, we would have been trying to do our best as battalion chiefs, right? And so then the one battalion chief that had tenure, that was on the job with us two newbies, was not great. And quite honestly, the chief had it out for him.
Stupid question. Was he a BC that was put on the chief, or had the chief promoted him to BC?
No, he was put on the chief. And in fact, I mean, this is all hearsay. So, but, the chief was told him, like, you should consider demoting because I'm not impressed with your situation. Right. And, I'll just save my comments about his work, but I would say that, and like we talked about, that it was threatening to him, and it disrupts the old power structure, right? And the union power structure, where now it's tilting towards admin. If we've got these two newbie BCs and this chief who wants to make change, and, the guys don't want change, and, we're getting rid of, like, hanging out in our pajamas all day or whatever they want to do, I wish I was exaggerating. But, and I don't know. I still would like to go back maybe now and say, like, what was going on behind my back? Because I have no idea, right? But I could feel it. I could feel it on calls where they're like canceling the BC. Like, I'm like, no, I'm going to continue in. What are you guys doing? I heard that the battalion chief, the tenured battalion chief, was telling people not to talk to me. And one guy that was talking to me in the kitchen, he came out of the kitchen, he told me this later, and he said, what are you doing talking to her? I'm like, okay, shunning is harassment. Like, this is from a peer, right? And so it kind of went around like that we don't like her again and don't do what she says. And, the most I can get out of the guys now, I think, is like, oh, that was really rough what you had to go through, right? And even I had to hold one of the captains accountable and go to discipline. And, I had to. It's like, I wish there was another way, but when someone is insubordinate or undermining your authority, like, you got to ratchet it up.
And did you say that the chief, the one that had the heart attack, was the one that promoted you to BC, correct?
Yeah.
But did you say that the organization didn't really care for him?
Right.
So you're in a perpetual catch-22.
Yeah.
Because they don't like him, so anybody that he selects arbitrarily doesn't get liked.
You're very smart.
And everybody, I could see the organization is divided. There's the organization that all likes this one BC because he's our guy. He's our old school. There's a new chief that came into town. We don't like him. And, oh, shit, guess what? He promoted you, so we don't like you either.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly it.
If anybody doesn't think that working for a first responder organization is just like going back to high school.
I know. I just wanted to be the popular kid.
And then you compound it by working for a smaller organization where there's no place for you to get out from underneath it. And, hey, you know what? I'm going to go take another station for a little while.
Yeah. Then COVID hit, and that one tenured BC went out on injury. And it was me and the other BC. We worked 72s for a year, and I could not. It was very draining. And plus with the COVID, with the mask and with everything going on, it was so much that we went through in that time. And that is the time. There's a couple stories with that I want to tell you is that I was losing my mind. I couldn't see straight. And that woman I told you about who was a mentor of mine, I went across the street. She was at the coffee shop across the street from the station, and I walked over there in my sweats. I'm a battalion chief. I'm wearing sweats. I just look like a hot mess. And she's like, and she kind of helped me snap out of it because she's like, Deena, you got to get your life together. And I even told the chief, I said, I'm going to go down to the skate park and break my arm so I can get a day off. And you know what he says? He goes, you can still work with a broken arm. And I'm like, this is messed up. But the other story I want to tell you is that you really don't know how grief is going to, I think if you haven't lost a parent, you really don't know how it's going to affect you when you do, right? So I'm on the job. My dad passes away. I'm trying to get bereavement. I set up so that the BCs will watch for me. I'm like, I just need some 72 hours off or whatever you get. And I had this whole plan so that because there's only 2 BCs, right? So that I had to figure out a way of trying to be creative so that I could take some mental time off because I am not doing good. That other BC tattles to the chief. We can't do this. Basically they're saying you can't have time off. So then I'm calling HR thinking another mistake is that I thought HR is on my side. I'm saying, hey, I don't want to say that I'm mentally unfit, but I am having a bad time right now. I've been working, all this time, COVID, my dad dies and nothing happens. So one night, I remember being at the station and I cried myself to sleep. I woke up at 4 a.m. I'm crying again. I'm driving around in the BC mobile and I'm just beside myself, and I called one of the captains that I trusted and I just had to let it out. And I just wanted to share that story because I was in such a bad way. And it's shameful too, because as a woman, you think, well, I should be tougher than that. Or, I'm over here, crying on duty, contemplating, I'm just going to drive this BC mobile into the freaking ocean. It's not worth it. At what point, am I worth it? And so, that was a really, really tough time. I
can't imagine what it must have been like to try to maneuver that and get through it. It's like we talked about, from the beginning. As a woman, you were already climbing Mount Everest coming into this career. And it sounds like every time you could possibly get a plateau to take a breath, it wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah. There was kind of a turning point, I would say internally, that we had a hazardous materials situation, which is a lot to do. I set up the command post. I did most of the first alarm just from my head. I mean, I was impressed with myself, right? And after the call, one of the captains said, oh, you didn't name evacuation group or some kind of shit like this. And something just snapped in me. And I'm just like, you motherfuckers, I just did a whole hazmat on a Post-it note and you got this to tell me. And then it was like, you know what? I'm actually the smartest one here. I'm actually the one out here doing it, and I was just done with it. That's when I realized, if you turn right, you're wrong. If you turn left, you're wrong. I'm just going to do what I think is best based on my training, education, and experience. all that time. I didn't figure that out until I was a battalion chief, to say like what I think about myself, what I know is more important than, like your critique on me. That was kind of a turning point where I feel like I started to fortify myself and my own self-worth, self-respect.
You ever think about, and not the FUs or anything like that, but do you ever think about if you could go back and re-navigate your career with all the knowledge that you have today?
Yes. And I couldn't do it. That's why I bring up that.
You think that you actually, from the knowledge that you have, you'd have just said, screw this, I'm out of here?
I think I could do it. I don't know what the outcome would be. I really can't. I mean, I could.
A whole lot more of insubordination claims.
Yeah. Or but like, I think that delusional part of myself, or that romanticized side that I was like, oh, these guys are going to love me one day, and then like, that never came. But that thing if I would have known that thing I was reaching for was never going to happen, and maybe I would have spoke up, because I think that maybe I. To be
honest, though, there's a lot of men who went their entire career promoted up, never liked.
Yeah.
I mean, that is unfortunately the personality of being in these careers.
Yeah.
So much of how you're perceived is what people think of you. If you're liked, you're not liked. I'm sure there's just as many men who are promoted up, and the whole time they're thinking, man, these guys are eventually going to like me. And you're like, shit, I got to the end of the road.
That's true.
Why is there nobody at my retirement ceremony?
Exactly. But I do own it now, like that. And these guys are good at sniffing out any type of weakness, and like I said, when I was giving orders more like suggestions, or like I didn't believe in myself, or like even like as much as like when I was being disrespected, if I could have just stared somebody down, or you know what I mean? Like I could have put a stop to some of that stuff, but I just kind of took it like a beaten dog.
Again, it's like high school.
Yeah.
It's dealing with the bully. If you stand up to the bully the first time,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
They lose their power.
So guess what? I'm standing up to the bully now. This year, and what I'm doing now is me reclaiming my voice and taking my power back.
Good coffee is important, but where it comes from matters also. Blue Line Roasting is a Tennessee-based, law enforcement-owned company. They're roasting small batches of premium coffee, fresh within 48 hours of your order. Whole bean or pre-ground, and shipped fast to you. It's great coffee that shows up ready for you to enjoy. But it's what your purchase does for others that makes it so much more. A portion of every order goes to support law enforcement families dealing with the impact of line-of-duty injury or loss. So you get a great cup of coffee, and a family gets support. Order a single bag, try a sampler pack, or start a subscription so it's there when you need it. Oh, there's another perk. Shipping is always free. And for listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Go to bluelineroasting.com and stand behind a company that stands with those who serve.
So that's why I'm so thankful for you to allow me to speak, is because what this year is about for me is taking that back, and it feels so good, and I'm doing good things for I just had a woman text me today that said, your videos are really helping me, keep it up, so I know that, and I know we were going to talk about retirement more, but I feel like I thought that was my purpose was fulfilled. And then I'm like, no, here's my real purpose. I went through all of that to do what I'm doing now. So I would say in that aspect, it was worth it. And I know we didn't get there yet, but when I retired, I kept looking under rocks for my purpose.
What I would like to keep on just a couple quick things before we get out of the fire service.
Okay.
My first question, when you eventually did become fire chief, did that not open up any doors for you? Did you start getting headhunted or anything like that to where there would have been other chief opportunities? equal to that, were you even interested in it?
Very good question. So, yes, it did open up opportunities. I did take a test, and I told my city manager too. I'm very transparent. I said, I'm taking this test. What ultimately stopped me was this sense of loyalty that I had to the department and then also to the city. But now looking back, I should have bounced. That was my opportunity to bounce. And because they don't give a shit about me, and the city didn't let the door hit me in the ass on my way out. So I should have looked for another opportunity. And, it would have been hard, of course, but like you were talking earlier, I could have come in, and started fresh. And so that is an opportunity that I missed because and that's part of the moral injury of like that loyalty that I thought meant something didn't mean anything. And so that's the slap in the face right there.
That moral injury is a huge component because I've had multiple guests who have had varying stories of situations with their organization. One of the biggest things is when you get that slap in the face and realize you're just a line item on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Get injured or something like that. And they're, it's a family until you can't perform. And then it's like, you're out the door.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of issues like that. We give this loyalty to our organizations, hoping that we're going to get it in return.
Yeah.
But there's the organization, there's the fire department, but then there's also the city that you work for.
Yeah.
And not always do they merge together.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, yeah, like we talked about, I kind of was on the chopping block from day one. And I don't want to give too many details, but you could read between the lines. But that city manager that I told you was not great. He held a public meeting and was going to raise the salaries of some other directors. And that public meeting and the Brown Act and all the things that you have to post it, blah, 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 open to everybody. And so I went to that meeting and he told me I should leave. And so I'm having a conversation with this city manager. I have my notebook in front of me. It's in the lobby of the PD. There's a camera there and everything. And I said, and I'm like shaking, but I felt like I was like facing a giant. Like I'm like, all my courage is right here. And I said, does my salary go up or down based on what's going on in this meeting? Yeah. Well, I think I should stay. And he said, well, if you don't leave, I'm just going to shut down the whole thing. And so I was documenting everything that he said. And I left and I called the deputy city manager. She said, call the city clerk. City clerk said, call the city attorney, whatever. I don't know if it's entirely, I'm not going to say that I did this, but a week later, he was fired, the city manager. So then they had a interim, then they had a temporary. The temporary became permanent. So I actually bought myself some time where they weren't quite able to get rid of me, which was good for me because then my pension time was building up. And, when I came into it, they wanted to cut an engine. There was $1 million ask of the deficit, or they wanted me to come up with $1 million. I worked my ass off and actually did a lot of things with the help of, a fire marshal that I hired, a woman who's amazing. She's, I don't know if I should say her name, but she went to another organization, but she got a lot of, that's our only revenue. We don't make money. And so I did what they asked me to do, but then they kept moving the goalposts, right? And then I'm trying to be working with the union, but it's difficult. And they keep pushing me, I felt, in front of council to save them instead of doing what the union should do with salary, benefits, and work conditions. And so that couple years that I was there, and then ultimately
Now, in general, does a chief actually have a significant hand in the union's negotiations with the city for their contracts?
So, what's interesting is in the beginning, they were in negotiations, and they had me come in as an expert or to give the city side. And then they stopped inviting me. And then I slowly started to see how, and I think they were talking to that retired chief, and they were just kind of like, whatever I said didn't hold any weight. Also, the HR director was really like corrupt is the only best word I could think to say. And she had it out for me as well. Like there's something that's very real that's called Queen Bee syndrome. And she was going to fight me to the death and until somebody dies. And I actually, I was the one that died because she got me out of there. But, there were signs like that I wasn't getting the respect that I deserved. And the police chief, I thought I was close to. He had worked there for 30 years too. And when we started, he got promoted like a few months after me. And we started sitting next to each other in the director meetings. And then I should have known when he didn't sit by me anymore and went and sat by the HR director, like that something was wrong with me. And
I only laugh because when you say he didn't sit next to me, it just goes back to high school.
I know,
high school.
I was about to give props to the PD side because he was a really good leader. And I think that the cops do a really good job with education, with leadership training, with just the way the system is set up. I think it works better. The leadership was better in the PD, I thought. And I thought that he was better prepared to be a chief than I was to be a chief.
If your perception is it was better in that organization, that is purely the culture of that organization. It is not. Okay. It is not across the board.
Okay. That's fair.
Just like within your firehouse.
Yeah.
That chief creates a standard.
Yeah.
And whatever they push becomes the norm. The longer they're the chief, the more that culture gets ingrained.
So I kind of was getting less and less popular. And you know how like I tried to create allies within the other directors and, have lunch with them and do things. And they would be like, hey, bring this up to the city manager, and then you look around and like, they're like, we'll back you up. And then it's like, oh, I'm out here by myself again. So and those are the things that I kept re-racking in my brain after I left. But so it was a slow, painful death until it just got really bad. Like publicly at a city council meeting, the mayor was basically saying that I was not cutting it, and the city manager agreed with him. And I had other people. This is one thing I talked about with my therapist because I had other people view they're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. So again, I think it was just like accumulation and a humiliation, and it was just like this death of 1,000 cuts until I couldn't take it anymore.
Here's a question that I just started thinking about. So your entire time coming up in the fire service, your evaluation was always done by a supervisor who was also a firefighter.
Yeah.
Did you actually end up getting an annual evaluation and who does it? Is it the city manager or is it the mayor? And what's that like, just in general?
Yeah. So, okay. Let me go back. That first city manager, after I said we're not cutting an engine, he tried to put me on a PIP. And I was like, why is HR here? But it never happened because then he got axed. Okay. So then I had some time. And then I was new chief, but there was no one to evaluate. And then by the time I finally got by the way, the city manager that took over never once came over to observe me leading the troops or came over to the fire department at all. Like, I should have initiated that. That's why I was saying that police chief was doing a better job than me. He had everybody come down and shoot guns and do stuff and, like invite to his briefings. And I'm like, he's on the ball, and so that's where I was like, and then I did invite him over for our annual inspection, and the union got to me and said, the guys just think that, it's invasion of privacy and you're trying to look good. And, and so I let them influence me. I go, okay, scrap it then, like what I need isn't, as important as what you need.
But from a leadership perspective, wouldn't you say that should have been, in a generalized way, you as a leader should have made your team go, hey, we need that guy on our side. So he's coming to this fire station, and what you're going to do is you're going to make the best damn pot of chili or whatever it is. Make this guy feel like he's at home.
Right. You would think. And like some of the guys would say the union's just shooting themselves in the foot. Like, and and a few of the guys were like, you're the best thing we have for this department. I don't know, their misogyny was just taking over their brains, I guess, or they just wanted me out. But let me backtrack just a little that when I first got the position, the fire chief position, the HR called me to sign the contract. And I said, do I get to negotiate my salary? And I also wanted some clauses in here that I could bump down, And she said, no, he's not doing that. And you should just be grateful that you have the position, right? So then I start, when the police chief promotes a few months later, he gets to negotiate his salary and all kinds of stuff, again, he's smarter than me and a man. And so then I started getting pissed. And then I started looking at, and I could show you, you could look it up yourself on Transparent California. Like, clearly I was like the lowest paid fire chief and all, and their reasons for why they were paying him more, like didn't add up. Right. So this whole time I was the chief, I was trying to get a raise, try to get to the city manager to say, I never got a chance to negotiate my salary. I'm asking for like 10% raise, like the raise that you're going to give me isn't even inflation. And one thing that he told me at my evaluation, which he was highly influenced by the HR director, was all beep, beep in his ear constantly. He told me that I wasn't confident. And I laughed and I said, I reject that. And now when I look back, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's nothing tangible. Like, it's just a vague feeling. But basically, he's just saying, I don't look at you as a fire chief because you're a woman.
As a BC, were you an at-will employer or did you still have protection?
No, I was, yeah.
Did you ever consider just going, screw this, I'm not going to take the chief spot?
Yeah. And I did consider, when I talked to the city attorney, I considered bumping down back, but I didn't want to displace those BCs.
Yeah, when you go backwards, that's not real fair to the people below you.
Yeah,
but if you never take the step forward,
right.
But again, I'm asking that question for you to give me an answer with hindsight, being 2020. You might not have seen, even if your eyes were wide open, you may not have been able to see the whole picture at the time.
Yeah.
When you took the position.
Right. Yeah. I would say if I could go back, I would, and this is what I would tell people out there considering to take the chief position, is to know what you're getting into. Like, it's a whole different ball game. And I should have created alliances with City Hall and relationships. And there's a lot of work that should have gone in before I even took the position, so that I would have entered in a better position, that I was kind of like, okay, you're it. You're the only one that can do it. So you're it.
Go the opposite direction, 180 degrees. Was there ever a point when you started promoting up where they tried to make you a novelty for the city? Oh, look, we've got a female battalion chief. We've got a.
That's 100% why they wanted me to. And then that was also like a feather in the cap for that chief. Like, look, I got you the first female battalion chief in the South Bay. And, the public relations people for the city, it was like that brought revenue into the city. Like they have some formula how they do it, the all the hubbub for that. And then also I hosted the girls empowerment event, the first ever for girls ages 12 to 19. I did that both years that I was the chief, and that brought a lot of good press to the city. And then being the first chief in the South Bay, and at the time, the only female fire chief in the Tri-County area. There was a chief. I don't really know the story. There was a female fire chief, and I don't know if she committed suicide or something. She died. So I wasn't the first chief in the LA County area, but at that time I was the only one. And so in LA County, there's like 29 different fire departments, and it was just me and all those guys.
Well, that's one of the deficiencies that you would have faced in your career is if you'd have walked in the door day one, let's say, I'm going to make the perfect scenario. You come from generational firefighters. Mm-hmm. Dad was a fire chief. Grandfather was a fire chief. And so I'm taking out of the equation that nobody's greasing the skids to get you there. You just came into the firehouse going, I want to work hard, but my goal is to do what my dad did, what my grandfather did. Who's your mentor? If there aren't other female chiefs, so you're kind of behind a little bit of an 8 ball because you really don't have anybody to strive to be if there aren't others that you could have mirrored.
Yeah, totally. And that female battalion chief that I told you that was a mentor to me, I asked her, like, were you lonely or no? Because they're so big. There was at least 25 women that would get together on the regular, which they could support one another. So that is, why the Women's Fire Alliance was born too, was because all of us speckled in these small departments didn't have anyone.
So since you knew that the end of the ride was coming sooner than later.
Yeah.
Did you start putting pieces in place, and were you planning for your transition out and what you were going to do afterwards?
So that council meeting I was telling you about, that was kind of like the straw that broke me. And at the time, just to paint a picture, is that I was sleeping on a cot in the fire chief's office because it's too late. Sometimes the council meetings go late. I'm crying all night. I had 3 dogs. I had lost one of my dogs 4 months before, and then another one of my dogs was dying. And I was driving 2 hours commute, I went from that nice schedule to driving the 405 every day. So
in Southern California, 2 hours, you drove 15 miles.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And for stress relief, I was drinking alcohol almost every night. My workouts were becoming non-existent. And I'm just trying to paint the picture that at that point, I was okay, do I quit? Looking at my options. Can I go work at the fire academy full time? Do I go to another department now? Can I retire? Just looking at my options, and talked to my therapist, collected some data. And
when you first got promoted to chief, were you of retirement eligibility? Were you or did you still have years that you needed to go to at least hit the minimum?
No. So I retired at 56% of my salary. If I would have gone to 55, I would have been closer to because of my age, I got hired when I was 33, it would have been closer to 74%, which...
Were you under PERS?
Mm-hmm, PERS. And good for me for promoting and making those base salary raises, because... if it would have been a different situation, right? And so, miraculously, because of that, I realized that at 56% that I could survive. I could retire. And then that's why I was telling you that I kind of was like, well, I better hurry up to like augment my salary because I'm used to, $100,000 more a year. But so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that time that lapsed that if I would have gotten fired that first night, then I would be telling you a different story right now. I don't think anybody really comprehended or understood what I was giving up by leaving, And so that's one of the main things that I've had to reconcile in my retirement is that, just I went over so many times, like, what if I would have just stayed? What if I would have just done this? And like the comparison to what other chiefs are doing or what other people are making, it goes nowhere, So I'm okay now. I'm good. Yeah.
How long, when you say you're good now, you're 3 years into it.
3 years. Yeah.
When would you say you turned that corner?
6 months ago.
And was there something significant that happened 6 months ago, or was it just a totality of working through the process?
I didn't know that I was working through the process, but, and I can tell you my process. I was more like intuitively just doing like the next right thing for me. The first year, I felt like I never felt like I hadn't gotten enough days off, right? Like I felt like I don't feel like I'm ready to go back to work anywhere. So I just keep taking my days off. And my main goal, I always set an intention every year, and my goal was to be pain-free. Like, I really had so much pain in my body. And like I started going to yoga and not really realizing that like a lot of what had happened to me was being stored in my body, also not being in a healthy place physically. And, I recall one time in yoga doing a stretching and I started to cry and I told the instructor, like, it scared me. And she's like, oh, that's normal. Just let it out, like you're just releasing stuff. And so I knew I was on the right track. And I thought, I'm just going to pour into myself and do, and like naturally what I was doing were things that were regulating my nervous system. I know that now, like being in nature and hiking. And even like, I started using the creative side of my brain. And in the beginning, I was like painting rocks and I was still like, my identity was still a fire chief. And I'm like, a fire chief that's painting rocks. I'm like, I'm going to go sell these at the, at the farmer's market. I'm like, what if somebody sees me? That's embarrassing, like this. But my mind and my body was saying, do these things. And, like I started completely like decluttering my house and like what I was like getting rid of an old identity, and I was just like throwing stuff in the dumpster, helmets. And like my husband's like, ho, you might want those someday, like take it easy, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to move on. Right. I took some trips. I went to Turkey with my sister-in-law and, I highly recommend travel, like to just take you out of the zip code, like to get your head right. And so really that first year was just me taking care of myself, doing things that regulate my nervous system. Like I just noticed the other day walking at the park, I just said, oh my God, my jaw is not clenched. I'm actually walking around. It's like a miracle. Like you don't realize how how bad your nervous system, how it just needs to recover. But there was one thing I wanted to tell you was that 6 months in and I'm doing my decluttering, and I went into a closet that had like my old shirts and like some uniform stuff that I hadn't seen. And when I looked at them, I got physically sick to my stomach, like I was going to throw up. And it was like I immediately was transported back to, and it made me sick. So I started to notice that there's a separation now from me and that place. And then another thing that happened was I talked to a friend whose wife is a therapist, and she was saying about when you're scrolling through Instagram, and I had been following like every single fire department, like in California at least, like my whole feed. I'm just like, and she helped me realize that I'm activating my nervous system every time. And so I went through and unfollowed. And then I really didn't want to go dark from, like, I was still kind of involved in fire stuff. Right out of the gate, I was part of California State Firefighter Association and was running a committee with them, just like free and part-time, but I still had a foot in the fire department and a foot out. And that was really good for me, because it was like a transition thing where I could still be, they're still calling me chief, and I'm still providing, a good service to the fire service community. But then there was a point where I think probably like around a year in, where I realized that I needed a complete disconnect. One thing I did, and I didn't really realize that I was like discarding an old identity. That was the decluttering, like with like, who am I now? And those don't fit me anymore. And creating a new identity for myself. So again, back to the manifesting. You can take this if you want. But I created a resume of who I wanted to be. I put coach, mentor, keynote speaker. I took a good photo of me, AI'd a nice little suit on myself. And then I just said, I'm just going to work backwards from here. Like, here she is. And I'm going to start moving towards that, starting my business and just slowly rebuilt myself. And the reason I say 6 months ago was when I really turned a corner was all of this taking care of myself. What I was doing all the time was I was in like a victim consciousness. I was constantly going through everything that happened, like we talked about today, and like thinking, what could I have done? And feeling shame about things that I did, things that I didn't do, and all of those things. And really like placing the blame on them. And when something switched in me that said, I'm going to take ownership of the good, the bad, and the ugly, a light bulb went off and I said, I own it. All of it, and how now I'm going to move forward. And I joined this group, accountability group, a supportive community of women. I finally feel like a tribe that I can belong to.
Well, that's something that I was thinking just about your story in general.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody listening, if you've not spent your entire career in every step that you've been in your career, to a degree, not liked, not feeling stable, not feeling supported,
mm-hmm.
imagine how you would feel at the end of 20 or 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's one of those things that we can't, the collective we,
mm-hmm.
can never truly understand what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine some of the women listening to this episode
mm-hmm.
are going to recognize a lot of the similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was throwing out the fact that, as a man, there's other things that as men we've dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there was a period where you had to be 6 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And so just be thankful of the era that you were in when you got to go through it. But I can't imagine the level of stress that you were under for so long. And they say stress is a cancer, and just the way it eats at you.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of wore it as like a badge of honor. And I realized that it's not necessary. I don't need to sacrifice myself, abandon myself over and over again, and choose myself now.
How do you like being a coach?
I like it. And I think, and I believe in therapy as well, but like, this is why I like coaches, and I have a coach myself. Only someone that has experience or that can give you real life stuff. Like, I feel like my therapist was good for understanding the physiology of it. Like I told you in the beginning that I was trying to find my purpose and clarity, and I was trying to ask her, my therapist, she's like, well, you have a lot of like transferable skills. And I'm like, what are those transferable skills? Everybody says that, but what is it? And like I was looking externally, like for someone to tell me, like what I would tell my coaching clients now is that you need to, let's start at the beginning. Let's build a foundation of your self-leadership, right? Your self-trust. Let's go through all the selves, your self-trust, your self-concept, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, like, and why all of these things are a little bit different, right? And it's like in your character of who you are. And when you say you don't have work-life balance, I see you don't have boundaries, or like, what are the things, or what are the ways that you're giving your power away? Like, I want you to feel agency and autonomy, and the locus of control of your life is switched to you. That's what I'm saying. Build that foundation. That's what I wish a coach would have done for me, or a mentor in the beginning, like to say, hey, Deena, before you start even taking that captain's test, you need to get your shit together here.
And the other thing too, is you can't put the task of controlling your whole life or advising your entire life on one person.
Yeah.
A therapist has a piece of your life to do. They get to mess around with the Rubik's Cube that's between your ears.
Yeah.
That's their job. Let them do that.
Yeah.
The mentor, the coach, that type deal, that person is going to help you, call you on your bullshit.
Yeah.
Ideally, give you guidance to make your career better. That's not necessarily the therapist's job. So it is the responsibility of you to bring the right people into your life who are going to advise you in their slice of the pie properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the hard truths to swallow was that I had to go inside, and only I had the answers. And it was like I was avoiding.
That's the hard conversation.
It is. And
sit in front of the mirror and talk to that person.
Yeah. Oh, I avoided her for a long time. But like, that's why. So coaches, I think, just ask the right questions for you to figure out for yourself what you need.
Well, a good coach will.
Yeah.
A good coach is going to ask that question and let you drive the path that you're going to go down.
Right. Yeah.
So when did you get the idea to stick a camera in front of your face and start giving your opinions and advice to the world?
So cringy. And like, even like doing this, I take my own advice, which is just, you got to keep showing up. You have to work through that cringe part, but again, it's like facing myself, right? And so when I first started talking on TikTok, it was, my husband even told me, he's like, it's like your voice, like what the hell, like, and I'm like, I'm just like trying to.
Thanks, honey.
Yeah. I'm like, keep your opinion to yourself. But like, and that's how like you go into like that, I don't know what mode that is. Like you're trying to censor yourself, or you're like in that interview mode, or how people are going to perceive you. And like, so was looking for what is authentic from me, right? And so I was considering...
The worst thing you could do once the record button starts is think about what you're doing.
I know. Now I know. Like, when you're inspired, just pick it up and do it, because, like, that's the time. Yeah. But the moral injury post that got the most views, I almost didn't post that because it seemed too depressing. But I went ahead and pushed post because I thought maybe there's someone out there that needs to know this term and can identify, resonate with what I have been through. And at that time, I was changing my name. I had thought about calling myself the feminist fire chief. And at first I was scared to do that. I didn't want to own that. And then I felt like my nervous system kind of tried it on for size and said, no, this feels right. And you need to put your truth out there. And again, like I said, like, reclaiming my voice was just try it, just do it. And now I feel like I get some negative feedback, but a lot of women are saying that this is helping me. One woman said, like, you just saved my mental health. Like, thank God I found your page, or like just all these good things that I'm saying the thing that the women don't say out loud or even to each other, like, so to me, it's like an act of courage, again, putting where my mouth is. It feels right. And like I mentioned earlier, like, I feel that, that looking under those rocks for my purpose didn't work, obviously, but I really do feel like this was my true purpose, was to fortify women and empower women and to learn from my story. And hopefully not abandon themselves as many times as I did, like, so the stories are like 20 years of, like, even all these little tidbits of things that happen. And so I just post on that. What I do is I try to give something inspirational every day, something educational, and then something relational. And so that's what I try to post every day. And
what's on the horizon for you?
The horizon for me is I'm going to finish my book by June or July. I'm going to start a podcast. TBD. I've booked a couple speaking engagement gigs just for girls empowerment camps. And I think that I'd want to open that up to get more. And then do some group coaching, workshops, all things women's empowerment and wellness. And and I'm going to try, firefighters, we work 10 days a month. I want to still work 10 days a month.
I saw a joke one time that said, 9 out of 10 cops surveyed, if they all did it all over again, they'd be firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. It was a good gig.
Listening to your story, it sounds like, and maybe I'm overgeneralizing it, was there ever a fun time, or was there ever a point in your career where you were like, man, I'm happy doing this?
Yeah.
And I feel bad for asking it that way.
No.
Because, maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong angle, but it feels like you fought so much through your entire career that I wonder if you ever had a point where you just kind of go, man, this is cool.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun times. I really did. I loved going on fires. I loved, like, just riding around in the rigs with the guys and the jokes and I really did have a good time. And like I told you that I loved those guys, and that's why I feel brokenhearted, because it wasn't. And you know what? I'll say that they might not admit it, but they loved me too, and they enjoyed my company. And I think probably my enthusiasm was contagious, like that I would be like, boot up, get on the rig, we got a fire, let's go. I'm so happy. It's just a dumpster, but I don't care. But like at some point, maybe they'll look back and maybe not. And I don't need that. But, when I drive through that town or by that town, I don't, it doesn't feel negative to me. And hopefully through this process of me reclaiming my voice and telling my story, that I become whole, and that we all, just, live happily ever after.
I like to end the episodes with giving the guests the opportunity to give their piece of advice for somebody else making their transition. I feel like I'm almost drawn to ask you if you want to specifically give advice to other women who are in the fire service or coming into it, or do you have something in mind that you just want to give as a generality related to transition?
First, I just want to say to the women that are still going to be coming into the job and that are thinking about promoting, to please do it. That now is not the time for us to take our foot off the gas, and we're needed more than ever. And the advice that I would give my 33-year-old self when I got hired is that you are stronger than you think you are, that your courage is your superpower, that you need to keep showing up, keep stepping up. Your authentic self is the best thing that you have to offer, and that you can be anything you want, including a fire chief. And to the women that don't know what they're getting into when they're retiring, of what the transition is going to be like, it's going to look different for everyone. And that it was really hard for me because I took things personally along the way. I had a lot invested in it, in my identity, and that I give yourself grace as you go through the process, and it'll feel like you are returning to yourself, and that feels so good. And I love all of you women out there. You're badass bitches.
Well, I'm thankful that you made the drive down. Thank you for sharing your story. And I truly wish you the best going forward.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.